Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. All right. So, yesterday we all have started with routing protocols. We understood the significance of routing and the various static and the dynamic routing protocols. Now, one of the very important protocol, what we are going to discuss today is the OSPF. Yes, can anybody recall OSPF is falling under which category? Distance vector or link state?
Link state protocol.
Very nice. It's falling inside the link state. So we had discussed yesterday the difference between the two. That link state routing protocol is one of the very popular one because it helps. It has a lot of good features. The first one of the very important features which we understood that the updates have been triggered, then they have been incremental, the convergence is faster, and it doesn't send the it is basically trying to you know tell that particular through link state database it tries to keep the map of the entire topology rather than keeping the information through the neighbors. It understands that it has to keep the entire map, and then it just pulls out the best part from that particular table, that is the link state database, and then pulls up and put it in the routing table, from where the router takes the decision to forward it to a specific path. So in the similar manner we are going to discuss now today about the OSPF. That full form of this is particularly open shortest path first protocol. Okay, it's an open standard. So the characteristic, it's a link state routing protocol, supports large networks, have a very fast convergence time, messages are multicasted, and it uses Dijkstra's shortest path first algorithm to determine the best path to learn the networks. If we have to compare all the three protocols which we have learned since yesterday, RIP is simply we understood that there are two versions and specifically it uses distance vector. So we understood what are the issues with the distance vector, especially with related to convergence time. It's very slow, okay, and it has a scalability issues. So typically not used in your production environment. The choice now goes with the EIGRP and the OSPF. Now, EIGRP was initially, as I mentioned, it was a Cisco proprietary protocol and then it was made open standard. But hence, uh, however, it doesn't support all the features. So, what stands apart is your OSPF, okay? Because it's an open standard one. So, we always prefer using open standard softwares, open standard stuffs. So, that is important. So here we have to understand that since I mentioned that every router in the network topology, every router in the network topology has the map of entire network. So how are they going to learn this? Okay, how do they exchange their messages? So each router describes itself and its interfaces to its directly connected neighbors. Just like we have RIP, yesterday we understood EIGRP. So they all are telling about their networks on their interfaces. So what they send as an update is they send the update of their networks on the interfaces where these networks have been configured. Okay, then the information is being passed unchanged from one router to the another router. Every router learns the full picture of the network, including its every router, its interface and what they connect to. So every information is being there, and this particular information is being provided with the help of link state advertisement, which we often say it as LSA. Okay, so with the help of LSAs we basically see that the updates are being exchanged. Okay, now, these are the 6 steps you need to understand broadly how they OSPF operate. First is they discover the neighbors. After they discover the neighbors, they form the adjacencies. And then they're going to flood their link state database. Okay, so through by sending hello packets, okay, by sending hello packets, they're going to discover their neighbors. Then they form their adjacencies that okay, now these are my neighbors. They understand their neighbors, post which they then exchange their link state databases, compute their shortest path, pulls up the best path in the routing table, and then respond to the network changes. So these are the broad operations what the OSPF does. Okay, so initially at the very beginning, it doesn't start exchanging the link state database. It is forming the neighborship with the routers. So in the neighborship means by sending the hello packets, it is trying to establish the neighborship. So these are the different packets as I mentioned. The first one is the hello packet. So the router will send out and listen for hello packets when OSPF is enabled. Okay, as soon as we start router OSPF, we are going to see the commands as well as we are going to configure it on packet tracer. So as soon as we write router is the command. See, yesterday onwards we have seen for RIP also we have to start with router RIP. So you're initiating the process. For EIGRP also you're starting with router EIGRP followed by the autonomous system number. Here also we are going to start with router OSPF, followed by that we are going to give a process ID. Okay, so first whenever you start with write the command router OSPF, so basically the hello packets they are being started. Okay, so that is being enabled on the interface and then they form adjacency with the other OSPF routers on the link. Next is what you see that the database. Okay, then the adjacent routers will tell each others through exchanging this database. They will tell that this is the topology table which I have. Okay, and then you see that you have a link state request. Okay, if the router is missing any information about any of the networks, then it will send it to the neighbor. Okay, link state request. Link state advertisement is any update if it has. Okay, and then you have link state updates containing all the list of LSAs which should be updated used during the flooding, and then the acknowledgements. Okay, so these are the different types of packets, OSPF packets. Each can be elaborated in a very rigorous manner, but we are not going to dive into very details of each of these packets. Okay, because OSPF itself can be considered as one of the broader topic to be discussed, which generally people who go for CCNP and expert level of certifications, they do a lot of configuration with OSPF. At CCNA level and for the interview level, we will only understand the basics over here. Okay, so these are the different packets what the OSPF has. Next is the configuration part. So as I mentioned, the configuration starts with the command router OSPF followed by the process ID. The process ID, it can be any number you can give, okay? Because this is the ID through which it understands. The process ID has to be the same in order to form the adjacency. So if it is not matching, then there will not be any kind of adjacency which will be formed. Okay, so you will say that different interfaces on a router can run on different instances, and different instances will have different link state databases. Only one instance is typically configured on OSPF routers, and multiple process IDs are rarely used. And it is locally significant. It does not have to match on the neighbor router to form an adjacency. So let's look into the configuration point of view. Now here is the concept of area. A very, very important concept in OSPF is the area concept. We will understand why do we need the area concept. Okay, so let us first understand the area concept and then get into the configuration stuff. Why do we need areas now? Understand that we have a very big network. Okay, let me give you the example here if I may have it here. Okay, this we are going to come, guys. This is the area concept where we have few routers in this particular network, and then you see there is a kind of border router which I have kept here, BKC, which is the headquarters, let's say, and you have another router. Now you find here in this topology or in this picture that I have created a circle setting up an area. Now why do we need an area? A very, very important concept, guys. Now understand this particular scenario. As we mentioned that OSPF is very nice to use for a very good high scalable networks, I can say. Okay, so let's say we are want to create a network, okay, which has thousands of routers and it handles thousands of routes. Okay, so if your network has 50,000 routers, every router has 5 networks and every network has 4 routes. So you will see that the routers will have millions of routes in its link state database. Okay, this is the scenario which we are considering, that we have 50,000 of routers. Every router has 5 networks and each network can be reached via 4 routes. Okay, so that means if you go and calculate this will turn around to be more than million root in the link state database. Okay, and it's going to be very large. Okay, for a very large network we can have this kind of database. Now for end-to-end visibility, we have understood that the each and every router in the network should have these database, so that they have a map with them. Like we have the navigation system, we know that with the navigation system we can identify what are the different network paths we can reach the destination. On a similar basis, we see that for end-to-end visibility, we should have the entire information which is in the form of link state database. Now, if all the routers have updates of all the networks and its paths, then they are going to receive updates when it goes up, when it goes down. Okay. And in such a huge network, there will be always some or the other link failing, and that will lead to frequent link state advertisement or link state updates. Okay. Imagine you have this particular scenario, and every now and then you are sending some update of links which is going down, going up. So, more or less, you are going to just see that there will be a lot of congestion because every router is sharing this information. Every router. Instead, if we could have, okay, we will see that we will, if we could have somebody as a president or somebody as a king of the particular network, and everyone sends it to that particular uh, you know particular monitor of, let's say, considering that he is the king of that particular network. So that particular router who is the king, if everyone sends the updates only to that particular king, and then he it itself tries to broadcast it or multicast it, then that will lead to a better option of rather every router sending the updates to each other. Okay, in this scenario where we see, this is where we see that every router who is in the network will share its table to each other, every other routers. So this is going to lead to frequent link state advertisement and link state updates, and this is actually not desirable. And the drawbacks are this, what you can see: frequent link state advertisement or updates are going to lead to high bandwidth utilization, memory utilization, processor utilization, and performance degradation. I guess this we have been learning in the routing tables, their MAC tables, what happens with this kind of stuff, right? So you find that since you are frequently utilizing the links for sending these updates on the interfaces, and then you are putting up in your database, calculating the shortest path, so you are requiring processor as well as memory. Okay, and that itself is going to degrade the performance because your actual purpose is to carry the traffic to support the services which you are running on your network. So hence the solution was to group them in a specific area. Okay, so that this area would basically help, okay, not to forward the area's information to every other router. Okay, we will see how it works. Okay, so here the OSPF says that it divides the larger network into smaller areas and control the link state advertisement and updates generated in this area to remain within that area with the help of summarization. That is why I had introduced the concept of summarization or supernetting yesterday. If you remember that we had that particular scenario where we saw that all the routes will not be available. There was that particular supernetting. Yes, here it is. So here we understood the concept of summarization, that if we have this particular BKC router, we'll have to maintain 8 different network information in its routing table. So this is again leading to huge routing table, and then again the updates will be received by this router every now and then if each of the link goes ups and down. Okay, so rather if I summarize this, I will basically having only two network information or two routes information in my table, and when entirely this link will go down either side r1, if entirely the router 1 goes down or entirely the router 2 goes down, then only this particular router will come to know. Okay, until and unless these any of these one link goes off, this particular r1 is not going to put its information to this particular BKC router. Okay, if let's say this link fails, no update will be sent. This link failed, no updates will be sent, because this link will go up and down till that time all the links are down or the router itself is down. then only the information will be passed to this particular router. So you are controlling the updates, you're controlling the information to be received by the all the routers. Okay. So likewise, we can see that if in order to understand this or to achieve the area concept, we need the summarization concept as well. Okay, so those who understand this summarization, the rules what we had learned yesterday, how we can rule or how we can define this particular super netting thing. Okay, clubbing the addresses which belong in the same sequence in multiple of 2 table or in the multiples of 4 table. So this is important, guys, when you are learning OSPF area concept. So coming back to that, okay. So here we saw that you have to divide it in such a manner that you are generating or you're controlling it within the area with the help of summarization. So you will put all the networks managed by one the local administrators in one area, and the OSPF area is administrator defined area. Within the area there is no summarization. Okay, every router will send the updates to the other routers which are there in the area within the same area. There we are not using the concept of summarization. So all the internal routers are going to receive the link state updates. Okay, so I can say that here, if I say this as XYZ W routers, okay, and these router as well who is there at the border. Okay, so whatever link up and down goes, this router will get to know. Okay, however, here the summarization is done. Okay, summarization is done over here. Summarization is not done on this router, on this router, on this router. So here your frequent updates, your frequent advertisement will run as per requirement. Okay, only thing is the other element or the other part of the area will not get your information, okay, until and unless the entire thing goes down. Okay, so you're restricting the updates, you're restricting the advertisements only to your area, and internally you're not summarizing it. Internally you are taking all those updates and advertisement. Okay, so on a larger picture, if you observe, you are still controlling the network performance by restricting these two things. Okay, so I hope this is clear why we need the area concept, because to control frequent link state advertisement and link state updates on a larger network, you have to put down or group together those networks which is controlled by one of the local administrator. See, we have mentioned that the networks managed by the local administrators in one area. Okay, so whatever the network one administrator is managing, all those networks has to be put up in that particular area. So internal routers will have end-to-end visibility of all the internal routes, its paths, and their cost unsummarized. The meaning is that you are not hiding the visibility within the area. You're hiding the visibility of outside the area. Okay. So in terms of that, you will see that this will help you in terms of, forwarding your packets. So then you will have a question that, ma'am, if you are saying that we are hiding the visibility, or the internal routers are going to have visibility inside the area but not outside the area, so if we have to communicate with some other areas routers or some information we want to forward it, then how do we do that? Okay, so for that we have these backbone routers. Okay, area 0 is considered as a backbone router for inter area communication. Intra area is what is normally happening, but when you want to have inter area communication, so you would require a backbone area which is considered as area 0. So if you have multiple area, multi area, okay, all the multi areas should be connected to the backbone. If any of the areas are not connected with backbone, that means they will never be able to communicate. Okay, I have one such diagram I will show you here. Where is it? This is the example when you have a multi area. Okay, so you see there are area 1, area 2, area 3, okay, and area 0, total 4 areas. So we find here that only area 1 and 3, they are connected with the backbone area, and area 1 and 2, they are not connected with the backbone area. So if any of the areas are not connected with the backbone area, inter-area communication will not happen. Okay, so just you can look into the diagram, the sign which says that they cannot communicate with each other. So in a multi-area communication, you need to have that backbone area where things happen. Okay, now this is understood now that administrators, they have to summarize the routes on the area border routers so that the advertisement doesn't get generated, okay, within the area, does not propagate to other areas, and they are being controlled. So summarization has to be taken care by the administrators, that you summarize the area border routers such that their link states are not propagated. Okay, the other view of looking into this is that, okay, why we don't summarize internally, I guess that is very much understood, that you don't want to hide, or if you don't want to hide the internal end-to-end visibility internally, why don't we summarize? Okay, so we can use the summarization on any other router to control the link state advertisement, but with the summarization, your end-to-end visibility will be lost. And administrators will not learn about any of the link failures of their own network, as summarization is going to filter it. So to provide administrators the end-to-end visibility of his network, it was decided to allow summarization only at the border routers, as update of my link failures going to other areas is unnecessary. Okay, so this is very important, why we summarize only on the area border router and not on any other router, because you don't want to lose the end-to-end visibility, the entire picture of your area. Okay, so the important line or the punch line what we say is that OSPF area rule is basically to control the frequent link state advertisement or link state updates. Wherever link state advertisements are required, put them in one area and filter it at the border router using summarization. Okay, this is as simple, where you can see in one or two lines which you can explain why you need an area, basically to control the frequent. Okay, remember this, because every few seconds, wherever, if they are triggered, though we know that they have been triggered, not and not in periodic manner it is shared, but even if it is triggered, we would not like the areas which are communicating the networks which are controlled by me, my information should go to any other networks administrator way, that manner. So for controlling the frequent link state advertisement and link state updates, you want to put those networks in one area and then filter them at the border router by using the concept of supernetting or summarization. Okay, so here we have understood 2 to 3 concepts. One is we understood about the area concept, we understood about the information that is basically inter-area communication, we need the backbone router or the area zero router. Okay, and the third thing what we understood is the different way of the OSPF works. It first forms the neighborship, discovers the neighbor, forms the adjacencies, and then it tries to exchange the link state databases. Okay, so these 2 3 points you have to remember. Now, talking ahead of the AD value, the metric, because every protocol has these parameters coming into picture. So when we talked about okay, configuration, we are going to come. It's a link state routing protocol, that is understood. It's a classless routing protocol because we don't have any kind of auto summary feature. AD value is 110. The metric is cost. Criteria is bandwidth, that is higher the bandwidth, lower the cost, and if the cost is lower, the path is better. And it supports equal cost multipath, that means load balancing. Okay, so if you have the cost to be evaluated which is equal, then you can make use of the feature of equal path cost, so you can put the traffic on both the network, both the routes. Okay, so maximum you can have four equal cost multipath, and in some devices, in some routers, depending on the version of your iOS. Okay, remember guys, how many equal cost multipath you have. Okay, this is subjected to your iOS. Okay, higher version specifically I have mostly if the version is 15 and above, you may find that it will support maximum 16 equal cost multipath. And in a normal manner, you will find that 4 equal cost multipath will be supported. What is the meaning of equal cost multipath? That you will see that if I have a network like this, okay, so if you have one path, okay, and the destination is somewhere here, so if the cost over here is, let's say, 5 5 10, here it is 10 5, okay, and here you have it as again 5 5 10. Okay, so if you calculate from R1 to R2, okay, in between you have R3 and R4. So the cost is basically, just a minute, guys. Okay, so if you calculate the cost from R1 to R2, there are three parts. If you calculate, this is 10, this is 15, okay, and this is again 10. So you find that there are two parts which are costing equally. So why not use both of them to, balance your traffic, okay? You can use both the routes because they are equal cost path. Okay, so maximum that way you can have 4, and for a higher version of your iOS of your device, more than around about 15 and high, you can go to maximum 16 equal cost multipath. This actually helps with your load balancing. Okay, how the cost is being calculated now, we will see. The parameter to calculate the cost is the bandwidth, and the relation is already been given that higher the bandwidth, the cost is going to be lower, and that will tell you about the better path, that this path is going to be better. So you will find the calculations here. Okay, so the link, bandwidth link, okay, so here we have a 10 mbps link and a 100 mbps link. Okay, the reference is considered as 100 mbps. Okay, and whatever is the bandwidth you have to put it, so the calculation of cost is reference upon the selected bandwidth. Okay, the reference bandwidth is considered as 100, and the selected one is whatever you want to calculate for your link. So if I say 100 mbps and this is 10 mbps, so you divide this, so you will get the cost as 10. Okay, similarly you got the cost as over here 1, because 100 mbps divided by 100 mbps is going to be 1. So the cost of the particular link is calculated in this manner, and that will help you determining the shortest path or the best path, because you're going to add them up. Okay, the way I added in the previous scenario where I said 5 plus 5 5 plus 5. So basically that cost, and even if you remember, the link state database has their in cost, their link cost, and then the total cost. So that particular cost is again coming up from this calculation. Okay, so here the criteria is cost, like we have in RIP, we had the criteria of hops, the number of hops, accordingly the calculation was done. Okay, minimum number of hops, according to that you're going to select the best path over there. So this is how you do the calculation stuff. And then coming back to this protocol number, okay, in IP packet, if you remember, we had this protocol number. Okay, so the protocol number for a OSPF is basically 89. Okay, 89, this is the protocol number, 6 for TCP and 17 for UDP. This is what we had seen, the protocol ID in the IP header. Okay, so I hope now this OSPF thing is clear. Now let us go and do the configuration part. The area is concept is clear. The link state advertisement is clear. Okay, now how, as I mentioned that not every other router should update or give their link state databases to each and every one. They should give it to somebody. They should elect somebody in their network who is going to basically distribute this link state database table, so that these frequent, these link state advertisements can be controlled. Okay, because every now and then if every router is exchanging the link state database table, that will create a problem. So how do we do that? We do that with the set of certain parameters. Okay, like we have to first understand the router ID. What is a router ID? And then we are going to understand about BDRs and DRs. Okay, the border designated routers and the designated routers. So in a multi-access network, how do we elect a router who will basically monitor or who will collect all the database table and then it will forward it to other ones? Okay, so first we have to understand the concept of router ID. So in OSPF, routers are identified by their router ID. It is the highest IP of the loopback interface. Loopback is nothing but, guys, it's a virtual interface. And these interfaces are where basically we will see that generally we use loopback interfaces in our routers so that we can pass on our updates on these interfaces rather than actual physical interfaces. Okay, because the time is very quick to send these updates on the loopback interface. The kind of thing what we see sending the updates is very faster when you're using the loopback interfaces. So this term you will come across a lot of time. Loopback interface, it's nothing but the software interface, okay, where virtual interface I can simply say, where virtually you are trying to give an IP, you are creating a loopback with the number and giving an IP for it. Okay, so router ID is the highest IP of the loopback interface. In absence of loopback, it is the highest IP of the active interface where OSPF starts. Okay, so here you will see that I have router 1 with the two interfaces, which is 100.0.0.1/24, and the other interfaces is 200.0.0.1/24. So when, and there are two loopback interfaces or virtual interfaces, that is 20.0.0.1 and 10.0.0.1. So these are my loopback interfaces. So it says the highest one is going to be the router ID. So according to this, the highest is this. Okay, so this is going to be my router ID. Okay, and if I don't have any loopback interface in my router which I have configured, I have not configured the virtual interface, then we are going to consider the highest IP of the active interface. Okay, the one which is active. If you see, this has been shut, this link has been shut, this interface has been shut, that means the active link is this, which is 100.0.0.1. So if that is why this word is important to catch, active interface. Okay, the one which has the active interface, that IP you're going to consider. So what happens if that particular IP or that interface goes up then? Okay, after a few time you found that the interface went up, that interface of 200.0.0.1. If that particular interface comes up, it is not going to change the router ID. Okay, once the RID is selected, it remains RID and it will not change even if the interface with higher IP comes up. Okay, so router ID is selected on the basis of priority, on the basis of the loopback interface IP, or on the basis of the highest IP on the active physical interface. Okay, very important, because on this basis we are going to have the election who is going to become the uh, designated router and the backup designated routers, because these are the two routers who are going to get the link state database tables and then they are going to monitor. Okay, so very important to first understand this router ID. Okay, going ahead now. So this is how the hello packet consists of. Okay, the hello packet is made up of router ID, then you have the router priority. DR stands for designated router, BDR stands for your backup. Okay, then you have authentication and all these fields inside your hello packets. Okay, so default priority is set to 1, however we can go and change the priority. And here you see there are some routers which are elected as DR, BDR, DR others, DR others. Okay, so we will understand how this particular thing works. Okay, I have written down very well over here. So the first thing is, OSPF behavior on a multi-access network is very different. It first elects a designated router, BDR, and all other routers will act as DR others. There are three things: DR, BDR, and DR others. Okay, so if there is a topology change on the DR other routers, it is going to send the update to the DR and the BDR using the multicast address 224.0.0.6. Okay, so here is where your DR and BDR is going to listen to you. Okay, so if any of the routers are coming across with any of the changes in their interfaces, link up, link down, interface up, interface down, so they are going to send this update not to everyone but only to DR and the BDR. Now why you have the BDR? Just because you want to have a backup, because if in case the DR fails, as we have always talked about redundancy in our network, we always create redundancy, that even if one goes down, the other should come up. So that's why we have DR and BDR. Okay, now how does DR is been elected and BDR is been elected? We'll just understand this in a short time. So whenever any changes happens, those other routers are going to give a update on a multicast address. Remember this, the address is multicast and not a broadcast. So 224.0.0.6 is where it is going to put the update. In turn, the DR will send this update to DR other using the multicast address 224.0.0.5. So this is going to send, okay, whatever information it has received from any of the DR others, this update, it will send it to all others using the multicast address 224.0.0.5. And this is the address where your DR others are listening. Okay, very important guys. As I mentioned, everyone is not going to give their update or database to each other. They are just going to give it to somebody whom they have elected as the king of their kingdom. Okay, so they are going to update that particular king, and then the king will decide and give the updates to the other routers. Okay, if the DR fails to send this update in a stipulated time, okay, so BDR has also received this particular update when this information was given by DR other. So since it is sending to both, okay, it is sending to both. So if the DR fails here to send the update, okay, if the DR fails to send this in a stipulated time, this BDR will now turn it as like a DR. Okay, so BDR will now become the DR and send it. Okay, once the BDR becomes the DR, it remains the DR and it will not change even if the original DR has come up. Okay, so on the backup designated router, okay, if that particular fails, BDR comes up, takes the authority, does the job, and it remains now as a DR. Okay, and it will not come back to its position of BDR even if that particular previous DR has become active. Okay, so the original DR will now become what? Because by the time when DR was elected, you need to understand this, that when BDR turned out to be DR, there were some DR others, the third person who became the BDR. Okay, so this became DR, some DR other became BDR. So very obvious, now the role which is left for the active, the one which was failed, it has to go inside the other DR or DR others category or group. Okay, so the original DR will now act as a DR other, because when BDR was made DR, some other DR other was made BDR. Okay, so this is how the things are happening, the processes are happening. And finally, okay, once your neighborship is formed, okay, post the neighbor formations, the same hellos are used to elect the DR and the BDR. So the hello packets which you were sending initially saying that you are my neighbors with my, and the hello packet information had RID, DR other information. So these informations are going to elect your DR or BDR. So the details already I have mentioned in the hello packet, what all information you have, router ID, router priority, DRIP, BDRIP. So initially everyone will claim that they are going to be, DR and BDR. Everyone will claim that I am the DR, I am the DR, okay? But eventually after exchanging these hello packets, okay, they're going to elect their DR and BDR based on the priority and RID, okay, the router ID. So DR is a router with the highest OSPF priority. If all the routers have same priority, then the election goes on the router ID. And router ID is the one which we said having the highest loopback IP. And if there is no loopback configured, then the highest active interface IP. Okay, so because we saw the default priority is set to 1, If all the routers have the default priority set to 1, then the information or the next parameter which will be evaluated will be the router ID. Administrator can make any router become DR by changing its priority. Okay, it is possible to change. It is more or less, if you see, the working is where we see that the bridge, what we understood in the spanning tree protocol. Okay, the root bridge, how we elected the root bridge and how we can go and modify that particular root bridge by changing the priority value. So over here also, if you want that only a specific device or your router should become DR, then just go and modify that priority. Highest priority one will get the first preference, so that itself becomes the DR. Okay, so I hope this things is clear, that once the packets which was used for your neighborship information, then it is used for selecting the DR and the BDR, and it is being frequently sent. Okay, this because if any time the DR and BDR fails, then the other routers has to go and get into the election. Okay, is it clear, guys? The working is clear. This is all about OSPF, guys, which I could explain you in the last 1 hour. Okay, any doubts before we go to the configuration? Because configuration is very simple, guys, but if you have any doubts, any queries, let me know. This is very in short. Maybe I must have not said a lot about OSPF. Maybe I can simply say that if you go and to the professional level certification, you will dig this, okay, dig into it. We have just understood roughly 10-20%, 10% of OSPF. It is not even like the entire OSPF which we have went inside. Okay, very very overview of explanation I could give you in the shortest time. Okay, so now let us understand. I guess most of you are giving good responses that you have understood thoroughly, understood well. So let's get into the configuration now. Okay, the configuration, we will pick up few routers and we'll try to build one network. Take some switches over here and few computers I'll take here, and then just connect them. So how many networks I will have here totally? Can anybody say how many networks I'm going to have here?
4 network.
4 networks, right? So I'll give these network as 10, 20, 30, and 40. Okay, in a very consecutive fashion, I'm going to give the IP addresses to these interfaces. Okay, so there are 4 networks over here. So we are going to use first go and configure their respective IP. So I am going to take this network as 10 network. Okay, this will fall under 10/8. I'm going to take this is under 20/8, 30/8, and let me take this as 40/8. Okay, so these are the 4 networks or subnets we are going to create. So let us do one by one. So first let me start with the these router. Okay, so the interface is 0/0. So let me make it as I can directly use this interface GUI as of now. So 10.0.0.1, hit enter and say on. Go to the other interface, say 20.0.0.1, hit enter, say it on. This is done. So 10.0.0.1 and 20.0.0.1. So let me go to this PC IP, give it 10.0.0.2, and we need a default gateway to communicate with other subnet. So I'll have it as 10.0.0.1. This is done. We'll go to this again 0/0. 20.1 is already given, so I'll take it as .2 over here. Hit enter and say on, and go to this, say this as 30.0.0.1. Hit enter and say it as on. Okay, now we are on this 0/0. We say it as 30.2 because .1 I've already taken. Hit on, and then 40.1 I will take here and hit on over here, and this PC I will give it as 40.2. Okay, so all the IPs have been given. Give the default gateway as 40.1. Okay, this is done. Now we have to start the OSPF. Now initially they will have their directly connected network information in their routing table. Let me exit from here, do show IP route. So you will find only their directly connected networks are initially being reflected in their routing tables, only the directly connected networks. So now let's start with the router OSPF. So as soon as I write router OSPF followed by any process ID you can give, let me give it 1 and hit enter. So you have started the hello packet informations. Okay, so the neighborship things will start now one by one. So I have to just tell about my networks, what networks I have. So I have 10.0.0.0 network followed by the wildcard bits. The way we understood yesterday for EIGRP, the wildcard bits over here, you have to take it as the complement of your subnet mask. The complement, so you had 255.0.0.0, so the complement would become 0.255.255.255. And here, if you don't put the wildcard mask, remember that they are not going to auto summarize. Like the way we had in EIGRP, that even if I don't put the wildcard mask, it will take it as the auto summarization will be done, that is /8. However, in OSPF, it doesn't work out that way. You have to go and give the wildcard bits, the complement, followed by that, because we have understood that OSPF works with the concept of area. So if you just put a question mark, you will see that you have to mention the area, followed by we are going to set everyone in the area 0. Okay, we are going to consider the area 0 over here, hit enter, then go and put up the second network which you had in your router, that was 20. The mask will remain the same, wildcard bits, and area 0. Okay, so this way you have completed your OSPF configuration on this router. Okay, next, similarly, we are going to get into the next one and go and configure the same thing over here. Exit router OSPF1, keep the process ID same, and then go and write network. This particular router has 20 network, 0.255.255.255, followed by area 0, and then this router also has the information of 30. So I'll have 30 and everything else remains the same. So in few minutes, you will find that update will come that the neighborship has been formed for 20. Okay, so you see that the neighborship has been done. Okay, 20.0.0.1 is on gigabit Ethernet 0/0 from loading to the full state. So this adjacency has been formed. Okay, the first process of discovering and forming a adjacency. 30, we have to still go and work with this router. Okay, so again I will have to say router OSPF1 and give the network 30.0.0.0 and followed by that the wildcard bits and area 0, and the other network which I have over here is 40. I'll put it as 40 and hit enter. So at this point now we have just given the information of our networks on the interfaces. Now I can just go and check out the, so you see again, the neighborship is being formed with 30. So now I should go and just run the IP route in command, do show IP route, hit enter. So you will find that I had 4 networks, which we had said in the initial state. So O stands for OSPF. Okay. 10 network it has learned. The administrative value is 110. The cost has been 3. Okay, the cost has been 3. Can you just check out how is the cost 3? Because the link what we have used over here is a gigabit Ethernet, right? We have used a gigabit Ethernet. So the cost is considered as 3. For in this router, we saw the cost is considered as 3. Where is it? The cost was considered as 3. That means 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Okay, 100 Mbps divided by, so how did we get the calculation? Reference is 100 Mbps. Okay, divided by, if I consider this as a gigabit, okay, 1 gigabit is how much? 1000, right? Reference bandwidth upon the actual bandwidth. So if I consider here to be 100 Mbps, see the value, since the cost is 1, okay, so 1 Gbps is how many Mbps? It's 1000 Mbps, right? Likewise, it stands to be 0.1, but then I guess I have done some mistake here. No. How it has taken, is it taken the fast Ethernet interface? No. We are on the gigabit interface. The calculation it has, if it is taking 100 Mbps, then only the cost is going to be 1.
Ma'am, I think there is a fast Ethernet here
Yeah,
on the third router.
right. So in that manner, if we consider this has been the cost which is being evaluated. Yes. Right. So then via which path it is able to see, the next hop is 30.0.0.1. Okay. And then 20 is over 110 with the cost 2. So 110 is the AD value, guys. So if you see, we had seen yesterday all the AD values. Okay. The directly connected one is the 0. The static one is 1. Then we understood RIP is having 120 AD value. Then EIGRP has the AD value of 90. And now OSPF has the AD value of 110. Okay, this can be asked in your MCQ type of questions. So remember this. The static can be again made as a floating static by changing the AD value. Okay, lower the AD value, the better is the reliability. Okay, the more trustworthy, actually not reliably, I can simply say the path is more trustworthy. AD value tells you about the trustworthy, how trustworthy you can keep on that particular path. Okay, so I hope this information is understood now. O stands for OSPF, and yes, so 30 is variably subnetted to 2. Okay, now we can go and just try to ping and check out. So here I will just go and ping the other PC, which is 40.0.0.2. Yeah, so that is how it works. Okay, dynamically now things have been learned. So they have all the routing tables updated. So here is your OSPF configuration, which is done by just very much similar to your RIP configuration. The name is changed, the process ID has to be maintained, and then we just give the network information. Any doubts, guys, here? Yes. Now, one topic which I'm going to cover today is the gateway redundancy. Okay, that is the next topic which I'm going to cover here. That is the gateway redundancy. I don't know if how many of you have heard about this term before, but we are going to cover that particular topic.
It is known as the HSRP protocol.
Yes. Yes. Hot standby router. We are going to take that particular configuration into the scenario today. Now, what is this gateway redundancy, guys? Let us look into the scenario and understand this better. So let's say, okay, we have a router and a multi-layer switch we are going to take, which will act like both as a switch and a router. Okay, and there is a computer which is sitting here, or your host is sitting here. So on this host, okay, you have, since it is a multi-layer switch, okay, it's a multi-layer switch. That means it will function as a router as well as a like your switch. So when we are considering this way, we have to understand that when we go on a different subnet, we need a default gateway. Okay, we need a default gateway in order to communicate with different subnet. Okay, we need a default gateway. So if I consider this scenario where, let's say, the computer has an IP of 10.0.0.1/8, and there are two default gateways which are possible. We can give two default gateways which are possible on this particular network. Okay, so if any of these default gateways goes down, okay, you have just configured only one of the gateways. You had possibilities of two gateways which we can use. Okay, however, we have not configured or we have not considered in this manner that, let's say, you're in this particular switch, I created VLAN 1 and I have given an IP of 10.0.0.2. Here also in VLAN 1, I have given an IP of 10.0.0.3. Okay, and here you are going to have a different network right or no? You are going to have a different network over here because this is the router's interface. So here we can consider it to be in the network of having an IP such that, okay. So in that manner, what we're going to see is there are two IPs which are being configured over the VLAN. Okay. What is the meaning of gateway redundancy is gateway redundancy is basically you're trying to create a virtual gateway. Okay, virtual gateway. That means if any of these link or the gateway, the actual physical interface goes down, because generally what IP we give it in the default is the physical IP or physical interface IP. So if any of the physical interface IP or which you have basically configured in your gateway, okay, on your default, on your gateway, you're going to configure that particular IP. If that particular IP goes down, then your virtual IP will come into picture. Okay, you will be basically going over your router, or you will be able to communicate to other subnets with the help of virtual IP if your default gateway which you have configured, that particular interface has gone down. So if I just go and break this particular link, let's say you have given the default gateway of the IP which you have configured on this VLAN, okay, because I have said that this is acting like a switch as well as like a router. So if you have given a default IP, okay, default gateway as 10.0.0.2, okay, and let's say this particular interface has been shut, okay, this interface has been shut. Now if this happens and there was no virtual IP in your system, in your network, if there was no virtual IP, that means forever you have now, you cannot go and communicate with the any other subnets, because your that interface has gone down and you are not able to reach out to other subnets. So hence the redundancy, because so far we talked about redundancy in several ways in terms of your in your layer 2 switching to increase the capability of taking the traffic. You wanted to have ether channel. Then we also understood that you need redundancy is a must for taking care of your campus design network. When you're designing the network, there also we understood that redundancy is a must. So why not to have the redundancy in terms of gateway? So in that case, if any of these interface where you have configured it as a default gateway, if that goes, okay, that particular interface goes down, then your virtual gateway will basically help you out. So the virtual IP is going to be, or let's say this IP was 10.0.0.2, and here you have given it as 10.0.0.3. So you may give a virtual IP of 10.0.0.4 to, you're going to configure it in both the route, in both of these multi-layer switches over here. Okay, and once you configure it as multi-layer switches, so what will happen if this interface goes down? Since virtual IP was configured on both of this, okay, the virtual gateway was configured on both of the switches, you could still communicate with the router, or you can still go to the other subnets. Okay, so we'll understand this with the help of the configuration itself, so things will get much clear. So we'll take up the same topology just now what I have discussed. Let me take a router and multi-layer switch. Okay, and let me take another layer 2 switch and a computer. Okay, so let us connect them first. Okay, now let us start giving them the IPs. Okay, so first and foremost, what you're going to do is you're going to give an IP to your VLANs. Okay, so the gateway redundancy, what we just discussed, there are three categories in this. Okay, gateway redundancy, or the first hop redundancy protocols, what we say. The one which I am going to explain you here is your HSRP. You also have VRRP, and you also have a gateway load balancing one. These are the three protocols which falls under gateway redundancy. Means using these three, you can basically achieve the target of what we said of having a redundancy deployed for your gateway, default gateway. Okay, so we will be discussing about HSRP, which stands for Hot Standby Router Protocol. Okay, so if one is being actively working as the default gateway, we are creating a standby IP or a standby default gateway. Okay, so how do we create that? So we have to get inside the switches now. Okay, just look into their interfaces properly, 0/1, and this is your 0/1. Okay, so let us get inside them. Okay, I guess now it looks better. So let me get inside the switch first. Okay, so here I am going to first get inside my VLAN. Okay, so I'm going to get into the VLAN 1. And we know that we can assign the IP for the VLAN. So here the VLAN 1, I'm going to assign IP address 10.0.0.2 followed by the mask and say no shut. Okay. On the second, see, this is a multi-layer switch. So that means it has the capability of a switch as well as the router. So if I have to make the 0/2 interface as a routing interface, because at currently it is basically a switch port. Okay, it is a switch port. Interface 0/2. If I just show you the interface 0/2, okay, so you will find that this interface is nothing but, okay, here is the information, fast Ethernet 0/2, and this is basically the information related to the switch. Okay, it's a switch port because it's giving you the information about the switch port. Okay, now if I have to make this as a routing interface, so what I have to do is I have to get inside this interface 0/2, and I have to just write no switch port. I don't want to take it as switch port. So that's it. When you go and configure on that particular interface as no switch port, that automatically becomes your routing interface. So now I can go and assign the IP address to this interface. So let me give it as 20.0.0.1, 255.0.0.0, and say no shut. Okay, so now this has become your routing interface. Just by writing no switch port, go to the interface, write no switch port, and then you will be able to configure the IP. Okay, so as of now, I've created VLAN 1, given an IP of 10.0.0.1. Okay, you can see here. Okay, sorry, 10.0.0.2 is the IP which I have given here. So let me just go to this PC and first say 10.0.0.1, and the default gateway I will give it as 10.0.0.2. Okay, that is going to be my default gateway for this particular PC. Now over this particular switch, the same thing we have to do, create the interface VLAN. Give an IP 10.0.0.3 with the IP no shut, don't forget to put that. And again on the other interface, which was your fast Ethernet 0/1, or sorry 0/2, I want to make it as no switch port. So this is a 20 network and this I will create it as a 30. Okay, so let me go to the Ethernet, fast Ethernet 0/2, no switch port, and give it an IP address of 30.0.0.1 followed by 255.0.0.0 and no shut. Okay, so I've just gone to the interfaces, VLAN interfaces, and I've just given them the IP, VLAN IP. Okay, 10 dot, this is .2, this is .3. Okay, this was .2 and this is .3. Now I have to configure the virtual IP because we were talking about the virtual gateway, which we have not done so far. Okay, and this is by default having now at present the default gateway over here is configured as .2. Okay, So now how do we go and create that particular virtual or HSRP configuration? How do we go and do that? So let me just finish off with this router also. First, gigabit Ethernet 0/0. This was 20.20 network. So this will be on. Yes. So now 0/1. This will be, I'll give it as 30.0.2 and keep it as on. So this is now connected. What you have to do is go to the switch. Okay, let me just erase this off. You will go to your interface. Okay, to configure the HSRP, you have to go to the interface, write the command standby. Okay, followed by that, you have to give a number to the standby. Okay, there is a information, group number, IP, preempt, priority, timers, version. There are two versions in HSRP, version 1 and version 2. So you have to give the number first, followed by the number, you will write IP and which IP you want to configure as a standby IP when the default IP goes down. So you will keep it as 10.0.0. Since 1 is already taken by the desktop, 2 and 3 is taken by the switches, I'll give it as 4. Okay. So this is what I'm going to give it. That's it. Okay. This is what I've done now here. Okay. The same thing I'm going to do it in this case. I'll go to the interface VLAN 1. And write standby group number 1 IP followed by the IP which I want to configure as a virtual IP. That's it. Okay. Now in some while you will see that the state has been changed. You will see that this becomes the active HSRP state change to active, and this will change to standby. Okay, you see the mode has been changed to standby. That means actively this is going to participate. So because now we have mentioned about the default gateway, if you remember the IP flow packet says that whenever we are forwarding the packet to the other subnet, we need a default gateway. And in the source MAC and the destination MAC, we have to put the destination MAC as the default gateway's MAC address. So in this case, the default gateway's MAC address is going to be what? It's going to be the address which is utilized by this, because here we have said that standby. This is my active interface, okay, or this is my active switch router. So this active one is going to give me the MAC address. So what you have to see is, if you go and just write do show standby, okay, you will get the information about what is going to be your virtual MAC address. Okay, so when you see that that particular interface goes down, okay, 10.0.0.2, which you have configured as a default gateway. So initially it used to have the default gateway's MAC address, but now that particular interface has gone down, so this IP will come in rescue, and for that you will need a MAC address to talk to the other subnet. So that MAC address or the virtual MAC address, it is going to use these 000.0C07 AC01. Now this one is because of the group number. If I change the group number to 2, 3, 4, you will find this group number will change, or this value will change. Okay, the first value will remain the same till AC, and this 0102 is basically the number which you give after standby. So standby 1, standby 2, whatever you give, there you will see. And this version is HSRP version 1. Okay, because if the HSRP version, you use HSRP version 2, you will see that the MAC address will have the value 09 instead of 07. You will find it to be 09, and here the group numbers which you have is from 0 to 255. There you will see that the group number value will change. Maximum you can have like about around 4,000 number you can have there. So the group numbers in HSRP version 1 is from 0 to 255. The MAC address value starts from here. It can be considered as XX because it depends on the value what you are specifying in the number. Okay, that is being the virtual MAC address. Hello time, in 3 seconds they are exchanging the packet. Hold time is 10 seconds. I can actually change the timer information also, and the preemption has been disabled. This is the active router. The standby router is the IP which is the 10.0.0.3. So if you remember, this was the IP which I have configured for this VLAN. Okay, 10.0.0.3. Where is it? Here. This was the IP which I have configured for these VLAN. So it says who is the standby router and what is the priority. The default priority is always 100. So see, you can go and change the active router. This case, it has selected 10.0.0.2 as the active router. Okay, let's say I don't want this router to be active. Okay, I want this router to be as an active router. Okay, so what I can do is I can change the priority value, and for change, after the priority value you change, still you will not find that particular. See, let's say I go and change the priority, because as I just mentioned that if I just change the priority, I will be able to, you know, go and make it as an active one. So even if I go and basically change the priority, so what you have to do is standby 1, you see the question mark, you will get the command priority, and default was 100, so let us make more than that, 200 or 299, whatever it is. Okay, just a minute. What value I can give? Okay, 0 to 255, sorry. So let it be 200. Okay, so even despite I change the priority, you may not find that do show standby. I've changed the priority, but the status is still what? It is the standby router. The active router is 10.0.0.2. Okay, virtual address and all these things have now virtual IP, everything is remaining the same. This is the standby state. Okay, there are different states: standby state, active state, listening state, speaking state. Okay, there are 4 to 5 states which your HSRP will go through. Initially it will be in the listening state, because it will receive the hello packets and it will understand that who all are there. Okay, then it will speak, and then it will get into the active mode, and then in the standby mode. So the active mode is where you're actually going to forward your the or it will act like a proper gateway, and the packets will be taken from the client and will be forwarded. And if that fails, so let's say I just go and shut the link. Okay, I go to this config mode and I go to this interface which this is connected to my switch. So I'll just put this interface off. Okay, now you should see that automatically this will become active. Okay, in just few seconds, okay, you will find that this becomes your active router. Okay, so even if I go and run do show standby, now you will see that this state is active, because that went down, right? That particular interface went down, but your communication should not stop. For that way you see that this now has become active, and you will see that. Now again, if I go and put this as on, okay, this interface, I'll pick it as on, you will not see that this will become active again. It will be in the standby mode. It just takes some time. Okay, because it is in that STP process. So even if this link comes up, you will not find that this will go, because out of these two IPs, ideally the one with the higher IP is considered to be becoming the, you know, active router. The highest IP will become the active router. But initially in this case, you must have seen that these 10.0.0.2, this became the active one, and this was in standby. Now what will happen? Let's say this is on now. Okay, now this interface has gone up. Now we will see that what is the state of this router. So the state is in the standby. Okay, it is not going to go again to the active mode, because now it is in the, this is active, and according to this also highest IP should remain as active. So even if you go and change the priority of this, see, just now we did the changes in the priority, but still there was no issue, there was no changes which was adapted. Even I changed the priority. So in order to your priority to be getting executed well, because the priority whenever you change from there to 150, okay, still there was no changes, because we said that changing the priority should change the state from, you know, standby to active. That thing will come into picture if you just go and enable the preemption. Okay, by default you just have seen that the preemption is disabled. Okay, you just see that this has been disabled. So if you want the priority to take, the priority should decide which one will become active accordingly in that to execute well. Because if this is disabled and even if you go and change the priority, the execution is not going to come up. Okay, the one which you want to make it active will not become active till the time this is disabled. Okay, no matter how you increase the priority value, if it is disabled, nothing is going to be executed as active. So what you have to do is first you have to enable this. So to enable this, again, what you have to do is go to the interface VLAN 1, standby 1. Okay, and you will see the option what you have is the preempt. So go and just write preempt and hit enter. After that, you go and set the priority. Okay, so default priority was 100. So what I'll do is now I will set the priority to 200. So let's see whether this becomes active now. So let me set the priority as 200. Okay, I guess there also I had put the priority as 200. Let me put it as 250 because higher priority I should put. And you see the standby is now in the active. The state is in the active now, from standby to active, because I changed the priority, and the priority effect came into picture only by enabling this. If you go and just check out again, the preemption is being enabled now. Okay, so you will find that this is being enabled. Once you enable this, then only the priority thing will come into effect. Otherwise, it will not come into effect. So in this manner, you can go and you can just go and see, you can ping your virtual IP also, which we have configured. So if you can see ping 10.0.0.4, okay, this you will get the reply, because default thing you have configured in both the switches, so it will be able to communicate. So hence when you see that this goes down, it is able to get into the virtual IP 10.0.0.4. That is the IP what it is using to connect to the router or to other subnets. Okay, so this is what you use HSRP. Okay, for your gateway redundancy, just the command is you go to the interface VLAN 1 and set the standby IP, whatever IP you want to give. Okay, that's it, nothing else. These are the basic commands, and just to check out those states, you can go and see the standby state. So here, if you see, I can also do one thing. I can go and do the debug. Okay, let's say when this went off, and I just can, let me just first go and write uh, let me keep the VLAN in the shutdown phase. Okay, let me go to the VLAN instead of the physical interface. What I'll do, I will keep interface VLAN in shut. Okay, let the VLAN be in the shut manner, not the physical interface. Now the VLAN is being shut. Okay, so what will happen now, if I have already given the IP, right, to reach this particular router. So let us go and again ping that particular router's IP. So what was the IP which we had given here? 30 and 20. Okay, 30. Do you think we will be able to communicate to 30? Because the default gateway which was configured here was 10.0.0.2. That was the interface VLAN IP. Now I have shut the VLAN. Okay, I've shut the VLAN. Let me just go and ping the network which we have configured at this interface. Let's say at interface 30. Okay, so let me just go and ping that, ping 30.0.0.2, hit enter. Okay, let me just put up the other network 10.0.0.3, which was the other IP. Okay, so you see that I am now able to communicate to this particular IP 10.0.0.3. Okay, because now it has been directly connected. Let me go and put it the IP of a t.y. It could not communicate with this. Okay, I have not configured the default gateway in this particular router. Wait, I have to configure the default gateway for this. I haven't configured the default gateway, guys. So anyways, let me just go and show you the debug stuff. This has already come into active state because see VLAN group 1, the state has now changed to active. I should have actually made the debug on. I didn't do that. So in that debug thing, you will be able to see. So debug command is just writing debug standby events. Okay, if you want to go and shut the interface, and after that what you can do is you can just go and write debug. So let me first make it on. Let this be on now. Interface VLAN, and let it be no shut. Okay, now this is in the active mode, right? Let me just go and put debug standby events. Okay, okay, packets, HSRP packets. Okay, so now the debugging is on. You would be able to see the messages or the states which I was saying about. Okay, so you see the hello messages are being sent. Okay, group 1 hello out, standby, priority is 200, virtual IP is this. So at the present it is exchanging the hello messages or the hello packets. Now what I will do is I will go to the interface VLAN. I will shut this. Okay, let me go to the interface VLAN 1, and now let me shut this. Okay, let's see what happens here in the debug. Okay, so far it is going right this way. Now this has become in the active mode. Okay, so these are the states which you will find. Okay, here also if I go and do the debug stuff, okay, so it will tell you which one is active. Okay, hello out to 10.0.0.2. This was initially, it was acting like a active. What is the virtual IP? Here it is showing active. Here what it is showing you 10.0.0.3. Okay, it is just showing the IP which was configured as this. Let me now go and change the uh, interface VLAN 1. Okay, let me just and put the VLAN 1 in the no shut phase. Okay, so now this has come to the state. So this way you can go and change the timer also, guys, because you have seen, let me put it off. Okay, exit and okay. Oh. Okay, anyways, I'll put this off later. So I hope you people have understood this gateway redundancy protocol. Okay, we have just done HSRP. We can similarly do VRRP and all the gateway load balancing stuff. Let me know if you want that particular configuration also. Okay, we will take it in the next class. So Monday, what we are going to discuss is we are going to discuss about the network management stuff. Okay, that is your CDP, LLDP, then your syslogs and all this thing will come into picture. And few service was left, which was SNMP. Okay, even NTP we are going to learn. Okay, so whatever network management and services few protocols which we are left with, we will finish off this, and then we will dive into the wireless part. See, the few things which are remaining is the wireless part and your network automation stuff and the security part. These are the three topics which we are left now to be complete. So first we will complete this management and the IP services, and then we will get into the three different category of CCNA which we are left with. Okay, yeah, right. Okay guys, so if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Any doubts, guys? All right. Okay, fine then. See you all on Monday. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Same to you.
Thank you.